everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I've got another quick Valentine's Day card. This time I'm using this penny black stamp set. This one is called Key to My Heart. And I'm going to use this adorable little dog image for this card. I'm going to start off by stamping the image onto a piece of Neenah Solar White. This is the 80-pound cardstock. And I'm using my Memento Tuxedo ink, which are both Copic friendly or any alcohol ink friendly, and I'm going to use my Copics for this image. The first time I stamped it, it was a little light. I didn't season the stamp, so I just stamped it again, and I can certainly use that image again. So anyway, I did leave the coloring in. Like I said in one of my previous videos, I've been taking some classes over at Kid and Clouder, and I'm slowly building up the confidence to start sharing it. And this image was fairly easy to color, and it took very little time. So I started by using my E31, which is my very lightest color, and I just kind of wet the paper all over, and then I took my darkest color, which is E37, and I put where I'm going to add the shadows in. That's where I laid that marker down. Then I took E35 and blended that out and extended it just a little bit further into the drawing. And then I took E33 and I blended that over, and then finally I used E31 to finish coloring the image. And then I added a little bit of some rosy cheeks on this dog. For the life of me, I can't remember what colors I used, but I'll have everything I used listed down below in case you're interested in checking it out. Then I color up his body and his legs following the same color combinations, and each time blending with a lighter color just a little bit further into the image. And then I believe just to darken up those shadows where the seams are of this stuffed animal, because I think he looks like a stuffed animal, so that's how I'm coloring him up as. I used an E39 just to further darken up those shadow areas. And then I decided I'm going to try something that I've seen, and I don't know the name of it. I call it dots, technical term. So back when I was a kid, we had these old animals, stuffed animals, that had this scraggly looking fur. Like they were fuzzy stuffed animals. And when I was a kid, they were already like an antique item. So that was kind of the look I was going for. And then I'm just taking all of the colors, all of the markers that I had used, and I'm dotting this animal all over to create what would mimic the texture in its fur. And it's just random. I'm adding dots. I'm using all of the colors all over the entire body. But where I had laid the shadows down, that is still noticeable. So I'm not losing any of that depth just by adding dots all over the entire image. For his little patch across the eye, I used E53 and 51, and I just blended that out. And then I took my journaling pen and I'm tracing the key that's hanging around his neck. There was very little that I could do to color, so I just traced it and darkened it up. And then of course I used my scan and cut to die cut that image, leaving just a little border around. Now to create the background, I took a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock and an MFT stencil. This one is called Clouds. And I've got some Spun Sugar Distress Oxide ink, and I'm just creating a cloud background for this little critter to sit on. Once I ink blend over one side of the stencil onto that paper, then I turn the stencil just to create some different textures for the clouds. It gets a little tricky to hold the stencil into place once you're that far down onto the paper. So I got this die is by Altenew, and it's called Fine Frames Cover Die, and I got it a while ago when they had the big sale in November, and I've never used it up until this point. And I'll be honest, I had some trouble getting the paper to cut through my machine. Now my machine is a little bit older, it's well worn, so that could be part of the problem. I don't know. I'm kind of curious if there's any folks out there that have this die and are able to cut through the cardstock without any trouble. Anyhow, I die cut several pieces from black cardstock, and I layered those up just to create dimension. So once I have those frames all layered up and adhered, I can get back to working on my background panel. And I'm taking the large heart stamp that was part of the set, and I'm just using my frame as sort of a guide to know where I stamp it so that I can stamp it directly in the center. And then once I have that all aligned, I can use my ink to ink up that stamp and stamp that down onto my background panel. And I stamped that out just a couple of times to get a nice outline. So after I had it stamped, it sort of looked plain for me, and I decided I'm going to color in the hearts. And I'm just using a couple of different shades of pink with my Copics, and I'm using a red. I'm not really blending because this paper is not the correct paper to do any blending on, and there's also a layer of Distress Oxide underneath, so blending would be pointless. But I do go ahead and color those up, and I think it really gives the card a different look. So as I was coloring the main image, my son said this was his, and so he sort of called the card as his own. And then when I decided to work on the sentiment, I picked the sentiment with the card in mind for him. And I chose to stamp out, "You hold the key to my heart." And I'm going to use my Misty to stamp out the sentiment because I wanted to do some embossing, and I wanted to make sure I got it just right in center. I think that frame, as much as I think it looks nice, I think it's really making me self-conscious about getting everything very straight and aligned on this card. Anyway, I'm using my Versamark to stamp the sentiment down, and then I'm gonna heat set some black embossing powder. So once that's all done, I can go ahead and start creating my card. And I use some really strong double-sided adhesive to put the panel on. And then I'm going to use a glue pen just to add the frame. And once I have that nice and straight, I can add my focal point image. And I decided to pop up the focal point image in the center of the card. And as a final touch, I use my Wink of Stella glitter pen, and I add that all over the little dog. And that completes this card for another Valentine's Day card for the series of this year. So there is still time to enter the giveaway. The giveaway information is on the video prior to this one, which is a Gerda Steiner More Than Pie card. I will pick a winner and announce that in my next video, so stay tuned for that and if you've played along. That's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.